Singapore reports 242 new infections on the day that all foreign worker dormitories have been cleared of the coronavirus.
A COVID-19 vaccine in development, we take you inside the Singapore clinic where human trials will take place.
Singapura, oh Singapura.
One question for 55 Singapore residents: what do you love about the country? Their answers might surprise you.
A very good evening. It's the end of the week. You're watching The Big Story, coming to you live from the Straits Times newsroom. I'm Haryanto Diman.
And I'm Dylan Ang. You can subscribe to the Straits Times channel so you never miss a single episode.
Now, this news just in, former Malaysia Prime Minister Mahathir Mohamad has formed a new political party, but it hasn't been registered and does not have a name yet. He said the new Malay-centric party would be independent and not align itself with either of the country's major political blocs, which are Prime Minister Muhyiddin Yassin's Perikatan Nasional or the opposition Pakatan Harapan Alliance.
The 95-year-old added he was forming the new party as other Malay-centric parties have strayed from their original objectives of championing the interests of the majority Malay population. Political observers reckon Prime Minister Muhyiddin Yassin is considering a snap election that could take place as early as September to shore up his government's razor-thin parliamentary majority.
On to the latest from Singapore. The Health Ministry confirmed 242 new cases today. They included 1 Singaporean and 6 imported cases who were placed on stay-home notices upon arrival here. The remaining cases are foreign workers living in dormitories.
But by the end of today, all foreign worker dorms will be cleared of COVID-19. Now, almost every worker would also have been tested for the coronavirus, and most are set to resume work this month. More details will be released tonight.
As Singapore adjusts to a new normal during the pandemic, a few more activities and events can now resume. Prayers for the 7th lunar month and post-funeral religious rites can take place in places of worship and some external venues such as HDB common areas.
And from today, Singaporeans and permanent residents allowed to travel can tap government subsidies, including MediShield Life and Integrated Shield plans for treatment if they experience COVID-19 symptoms within 14 days of return. But there is one thing that will not change just yet. Working from home will continue as the default arrangement to help keep community transmissions in check.
Meanwhile, elsewhere, several countries in the region are seeing a resurgence of COVID-19. The Philippines has overtaken Indonesia as Southeast Asia's new coronavirus hotspot, with more than 119,000 cases. Earlier in the week, Manila went back into a lockdown as infections soared and hospitals ran out of beds.
Hong Kong is offering free COVID-19 testing to all residents of the city in an effort to contain the outbreak. Chief Executive Carrie Lam said it is a one-time free voluntary test that will begin in 1 to 2 weeks.
1.5 million workers in the Australian state of Victoria will receive a wage subsidy to help make up for lost income during a 6-week lockdown. The state today announced 450 new COVID-19 cases and 11 deaths. With daily cases now in the hundreds, the outbreak threatens to spill into other states. Let's discuss all of this and more with Professor Teo Yik Ying, Dean of the Swee Hock School of Public Health at the National University of Singapore. Professor Teo, the COVID-19 Multi-Ministry Task Force yesterday said with nearly all foreign workers cleared of COVID-19 by today, the vast majority of them are set to return to work by the end of the month. Now, this means construction activities and projects should be able to resume soon. How can Singapore ensure the risk of a resurgence is kept under control?
Thanks for having me again. So we've spoken quite a bit about what to do to keep the community situation in check. So let's focus specifically on the foreign workers. All foreign workers will now be tested every 2 weeks when they return to work, and this will be already a form of active screening of the foreign workers. And in addition to that, we have started sewage water testing at many of the dormitories. And this is actually a way of quickly detecting whether anyone in that particular dormitory could be infected and are thus shedding viruses through their waste. And if we look more broadly, there are three sets of activities that could put a foreign worker at risk of being infected. The first is within the dormitory, second is when they're at work, and the third is when they're out in public, perhaps during some evenings or weekends. And I think when it comes to the first condition, modifications have already been made to the living conditions in the dormitories. There's been some infrastructural developments looking at density and living spaces. Some have been around process improvement for around cleaning, disinfection, and the zoning of cooking, dining, and toilet facilities. And I think this will all help to contribute somewhat to reduce the transmission risk within the dorms. Now, if we look at the work sites, there are now very similar safe management requirements around such as social distancing as much as possible, and everyone is now required to wear a mask at the work sites. This may sound simple, but I still believe that these are some of the very crucial rules to help to reduce the risk of infection. And now, lastly, if we look at what happens in public, there's the same expectations around mask wearing, social distancing. So what works to protect the community right now from being infected will similarly extend to this segment of the Singapore population, the migrant workers.
The number of community cases has decreased from an average of 3 to 2 per day in the past week. The number of unlinked cases has also remained stable at an average of 1 case per day. Now, the task force also expects the number of cases to drop significantly by end August. Now, and there are also signs of easing up with hotels and attractions reopening and more religious activities resuming. Will we see more easing of other restrictions?
So I do think that we will work towards easing more restrictions. I think it should be highlighted that having 0 cases during a comprehensive lockdown is not at all an indication that the country is coping well, but instead it is actually allowing life to return to some degree of normalcy while maintaining a low number of transmission in the community for the long term. Those are signs that we are able to cope well. So I think we do have space for further easing of the rules. But I'd like to highlight once again that this really require individuals, operators, employers to map out the conditions that allow a greater range of activities to resume in a safe manner.
Now, Prof, let's talk about an ideal world. What would the ideal balance be between relaxing restrictions on one hand and not risking another flare-up on the other hand?
So, you know, I talk about the COVID-19 reality, especially when it comes to easing restriction. It's like stacking a house of cards. The more restrictions that we ease, we are like building up even more layers in the house of cards. And we all know that the higher you build this house of cards, the riskier it becomes. A single wrong move can potentially collapse the entire stack. Now, let's look at it by asking this question. Can we choose not to ease up and always just concentrate on the basic arrangement, effectively concentrating on just building the first layer? I think economically, it is not sustainable. And I think from the scientific perspective, we now know a lot more on how to protect the community, that we can definitely build beyond the first layer. So what we have to do is really to reduce the risk of widespread community transmission. We can rely on scientific evidence, the latest science, to perform constant surveillance. We talk about tracking and tracing comprehensively, make sure individual sectors like the retail, F&B, local tourism, even sports have in place the proper implementations of the measures for safe management. And I always highlight this, having a cooperative public who follow the recommendations and the regulations. These are all like the glue that will help to keep the house of cards from collapsing. So if we are able to continue experimenting with more easing, like what we are currently doing, we pause and monitor for a couple of weeks. If things remain in control, we relax a bit more. We pause, we monitor again for another couple of weeks. So we will be able to see whether the situation remains under control. And I keep talking about under control. What does it actually mean? I don't think it's realistic to shoot for 0 cases, but I think what we are aiming for is not to go beyond, say, 5 to 10 community cases daily. Majority of them hopefully will be linked. I think that would be a situation under control, and I hope that will be when we have the confidence that the measures that we put in place are sufficient, are sound, and we can allow to ease a lot more.
Well, thanks for your time as always, Prof. Teo. That was Professor Teo Yik Ying, who's the Dean at the Swee Hock School of Public Health at NUS.
Meanwhile, clinical trials for COVID-19 vaccine co-developed by Singapore scientists and a US pharmaceutical firm are about to begin. The trial will be conducted at the SingHealth Investigational Medicine Unit located in the Singapore General Hospital.
Over 150 healthy volunteers of different ages are expected to take part in the early phase clinical trial. To ensure their safety, a stringent regulatory and ethics approval process has been put in place.
So far, we have more than 250 people who have come forward and expressed interest to take part. But not everyone eventually will come for screening, and even for those who come for screening, not everybody will eventually qualify to be enrolled into the study. So we are still on the lookout for more volunteers.
The SingHealth Investigational Medicine Unit, which is administering the trial, took the Straits Times on a walkthrough earlier today of what volunteers can expect. We are joined now by science correspondent Audrey Tan, who is at Singapore General Hospital, to tell us more. Welcome, Audrey. Now let's get straight into it. What did you find out during the tour, and how was the experience like?
Hi, yes. So there are multiple stages involved in the whole vaccine trial, which is expected to last until this October. And volunteers will not be expected to make any hospital stays throughout this entire trial. It's only just outpatient visits. And so one of the first stages would be that volunteers will be given a briefing, and researchers would have to obtain their informed consent before they actually commence anything else. And the reason for this is because the volunteers would need to be briefed on what is expected of them during the entire trial, as well as what are potential side effects that they may experience. And they are given some time to think about whether or not they want to consent. Once consent has been given, the researchers would then proceed to screen the volunteers. So this screening process is what is going on right now. Researchers are still currently screening the volunteers that have come forward so far. And this procedure involves similar things that you would expect during typical health checkups. So for example, volunteers would have their height and weight taken. They will go through an ECG. They would have blood samples and urine samples taken. And time is needed to analyze all these samples before researchers can determine if the volunteer who has stepped forward is eligible to proceed. And currently, we are currently at this stage of the trial in Singapore. The actual vaccinations are expected to start next week. And during this procedure, volunteers or the subjects who are now involved in the trial will be given another medical checkup before the vaccination is given via an injection into their arm. And after this procedure is done, the volunteers will also be given contact details of any medical professionals so that they are accessible 24/7. They will also be given a diary to log down how they feel throughout the entire procedure, and they would also have to make regular return visits to IMU so that researchers can continue taking down details about how they are proceeding so far.
Right. Audrey, how significant are these trials to get us closer to the end goal of a successful vaccine?
So yes, everyone is very excited or looking forward to a vaccine for COVID-19 to be developed. And worldwide, there are many research groups looking at developing different kinds of vaccines. And it's worth noting that there are over 139 vaccines that are still at the preclinical stage, which means that they have not yet been tested in humans. And worldwide, there are only, I think, 25 or 26 vaccine candidates that have reached the stage of human trials. So the fact that the Singapore co-developed vaccine is at this stage, I think, is something that is significant. And we will just have to monitor the process as the science develops and as the trial develops to see what remains to be seen in the future.
Right. Well, thank you so much, Audrey, for joining us. We've been speaking to science correspondent Audrey Tan on her first-hand experience visiting the lab.
On to other local news. A hospital has come up with new box shields that offer added protection for healthcare workers performing high-risk aerosol-generating procedures on critically ill patients, including COVID-19 cases. The 3 different shields are detachable and can be fixed onto intensive care unit and transfer beds, unlike existing ones that are placed over patients who are reclined flat on the bed. During emergencies in the ICU, the first responder can also provide oxygen therapy for patients through the box shield, while the rest of the medical team gear up.
Local singer Alif Aziz pleaded guilty today to stealing from an Indonesian celebrity in a hotel room and to behaving in a disorderly manner outside Orchard Towers. The 29-year-old had stolen 300 Singapore dollars and 1 million rupiah from the actress' handbag in a hotel room in June 2019. He was arrested a few months later for disorderly behavior near Orchard Towers after he was found gesturing wildly and shouting at passers-by.
A man was charged today with importing and possessing 158 unlicensed airsoft handguns after police received a tip-off about replica toy guns sold online. Airsoft guns or any other guns that shoot pellets using compressed gas are considered arms under the Arms and Explosives Act. Those convicted of possessing or having under their control any gun without a license face a fine of up to $5,000 per gun and up to 3 years in jail.
Let's take a look at the global headlines. US President Donald Trump has issued executive orders banning any US transactions with ByteDance, the Chinese company that owns video sharing app TikTok, and Tencent, the owner of the WeChat app, starting in 45 days. The orders came as authorities said this week it was stepping up efforts to purge untrusted Chinese apps from US digital networks, referring to TikTok and WeChat as significant threats.
Former Malaysian Finance Minister Lim Guan Eng has been charged with soliciting a bribe over a controversial 6.3 billion ringgit undersea tunnel project during his time as Penang Chief Minister. He pleaded not guilty. The charge sheet alleged that he had asked for a bribe of 10% of future profits from a company that was awarded a contract to build the undersea tunnel. If found guilty, Mr. Lim could be jailed for up to 20 years and fined.
24 people in Hong Kong, including pro-democracy activist Joshua Wong, have been charged with taking part in an illegal assembly at a vigil on June 4th. The vigil was organized to commemorate the crackdown on protesters in and around Beijing's Tiananmen Square in 1989. It was the first time that a vigil had been banned in semi-autonomous Hong Kong, with police citing coronavirus restrictions on group gatherings and refusing permission for it to take place.
President Halimah Yacob posted a National Day video message today, thanking frontline workers for their hard work and contributions during the ongoing COVID-19 pandemic.
She also said she is confident that a stronger Singapore will emerge if everyone stays together and mounts a united front.
The pandemic is far from over, but thanks to the relentless work of our frontline fighters, we have managed to stabilize the situation in Singapore. I am also heartened by the way many Singaporeans have come together and mobilized resources to help one another during this difficult period. So although this year's National Day festivities have to be very different from the years before, I hope our spirits will not be dampened.
So Dylan, this weekend, it's going to be a long weekend because of the National Day celebration. What are you going to be doing this weekend?
Well, I know where I'll be on Sunday.
That's right. So will I. Now, both of us, we're working on Sunday.
Yeah.
And Sunday is, of course, National Day. And we'll be bringing you a special NDP show from 9:30 a.m. I'll be at the Padang.
And I'll be at Ng Teng Fong Hospital. Join us as we celebrate the nation's 55th birthday. Now, we asked 55 people what they like best about Singapore, and here's what they said.
Singapore, oh Singapore, Singapore, oh Singapore.
Why I love Singapore? Singapore is a very peaceful country.
Security-wise, very good.
Feel safe in Singapore.
People can walk around in any time of the day.
然后这里社会安定、安全。
I think it's a safe environment to grow up to.
Defense forces are strong.
We feel protected.
You can walk around at 3-4 a.m. in the morning and you feel safe.
I can get kopi o kosong at midnight.
I like the fact that we actually can drink directly from our tap waters.
The food.
The different types of food.
I can try the different types of food available instead of just trying from my own culture.
Nasi lemak, I love nasi biryani.
It's awesome, it's delicious.
Compared to other countries, I still love Singapore, the char kway teow.
There's a certain taste that unique to Singapore.
We're also moving towards a more diverse society where we have more voices in parliament.
We have more opposition voices, more women in parliament.
Our politics have evolved, our country has evolved.
I love the racial harmony,
diverse culture,
The social harmony.
the multiracial society.
We overlook our differences.
And we're willing to learn from one another.
So what do you love about Singapore?
I love watching jets flying.
Like there's a lot of places for me to like hang out with friends.
Like the Marina Bay Sands, always my favorite place.
There's a lot of places to play sports around.
I like the Singapore. I 5 years working Singapore.
There's opportunity here for everyone. Singapore has been my home for like over 10 years. The people here have been like very welcoming.
I have many friends from Singapore.
我的家庭在这边，孩子在身边，大家都能够看到、照顾到。I love the people here. Pasal kita di Singapura kita bersatu padu, susah senang kita sama-sama.
In a word, unity.
In fact, now I'm going to help to distribute the National Day Fun Pack. I feel wasted. I don't have the lion mask.
Very hygienic.
The weather, no other city has this kind of humidity.
But still can see a lot of green.
Singapore 很美咯，lalu kedudukan dia bagus, modern lagi lawa dan cantik.
There is a lot of efficiency. The public transportations are good.
It's very accessible.
It's very convenient and very easy to get around.
I like the fact that the school is very close to my house and I don't have to walk a lot.
I'm very proud of Singapore's education system. The education now for the kids are more better than last time.
Then now COVID-19 problem also. See the Singapore all nicely controlled.
Government has put a lot of good measures into place. I'm blessed to be here at this time.
It's a privilege to be here.
Because Singapore is my country. I'm a Singaporean, born in Singapore. I love Singapore.
Happy birthday, Singapore!
Everybody, Singapore, very happy.
We're coming to you live from the Padang this Sunday morning to celebrate the nation's birthday.
Right in the heart of Sengkang,
From Hospital,
Kotekpot Hospital, live from Changi Airport.
the Red Lions are scheduled to arrive from the sky any moment now. It's almost here. Celebrate the nation's 55th birthday bonanza with us on a very special NDP show live this Sunday from 9:30 a.m.
That's right, from the parade at the Padang to the fireworks, the Light Up the Night Sky will have you covered from start to finish. So be sure to join us. That's at 9:30 a.m. on the 9th of August.
And those are our top stories for today. For more news and videos, visit straitstimes.com and subscribe to our YouTube channel by hitting the red button below.
Once again, I'm Haryanto Diman with Dylan Ang. Don't forget to join us on Sunday for the NDP show live from 9:30 a.m. We'll see you then. In the meantime, have a good weekend.